Here's everything you might have missed in the new Venom There Be Carnage trailer. On Monday, August 2nd, Sony Pictures Entertainment awoke to a knock-knock on their door. Who was it? The devil. And what did they do? They let him in, along with a brand new trailer for Venom There Be Carnage. The symbiote sequel gives us a much closer look at Woody Harrelson's unhinged Cletus Kasady, the Crimson Clintar carnage that he becomes, and the trials and travails of Eddie Brock trying to coexist peacefully with Venom. Now we're going to break down all the Easter eggs, hidden details, and subtle references that you might have missed in the brand new trailer. However, with just over a month until the film hits theaters in the UK on September 15th and the US on September 24th, if you want to go into this movie knowing less about the plot than Eddie Brock knows about how to eat a lobster, then leave now lest ye be spoiled. Okay, let's get into it, shall we? The trailer begins with Eddie Brock on his Ducati motorcycle from the first film riding around the streets of San Francisco at night with his perpetual roommate and gooey partner in crime, Venom. While in the first film we saw Venom transform into the lethal protector of San Francisco like he does in the comics, not all is well for our heroes right now. Namely, Venom thinks they should be out there snacking on bad guys all the time, always. Because as we learned in the Venom Sign of the Boss comics, Venom requires a chemical compound called phenethylamine. It's a central nervous system stimulant and mood booster found in humans and apparently chocolate. But rather than glurping humans like blood-filled tubes of Go-Gurt, Eddie prefers to feed Venom his body weight in chocolate bars instead. But in Let There Be Carnage, it seems that Eddie Brock is restraining Venom's predatory impulses even further, letting him sink his choppers into a tire rather than low-level street thugs. Venom wants to break free, but Eddie's worried that his symbiote sidekick will get hauled off to Area 51, where no amount of Naruto-running protesters can save him. Eddie tries to lay down some ground rules for Venom, writing convenient reminders on pizza boxes, to which Venom has a very normal reaction.
I'm sorry! I don't know what came over me, please let me fix it, so I can break it again!
Much like Venom healed Eddie's broken bones in the first film, he can apparently heal Eddie's nose as well, just so he can break it all over again. Venom calls Eddie a loser, which is a real case of the symbiote calling the kettle black if you ask me.
On my planet, I am kind of a loser, like you.
Now, in between Eddie getting smacked around, we travel back to the Ravencroft Institute, a sanitarium for the criminally insane that first appeared in 1991's Spectacular Spider-Man 178. Essentially, it's Marvel's version of Arkham Asylum. This psychiatric institution contains some of the deadliest people in the Marvel Universe, and it has a dark past that could come into play in this film as well. In 2020's Ruins of Ravencroft Carnage #1, we learned that Ravencroft was built on a cursed land dedicated to the worship of the Dark God Null. It also once housed Cletus Kasady's murderous ancestor, Cortland Kasady, who was transformed into a cannibal killer by the Cult of Null. And with the biblical allusion in the film's subtitle, and particularly the trailer shots of Carnage appearing like this deadly deity in front of a stained glass window in a church, maybe elements of that storyline could seep into Let There Be Carnage as well. Now, as in the first trailer, we see a glimpse of Shriek unleashing her supersonic powers in her cell. Better known as Frances Barrison, played here by Naomi Harris, she's a serial killer with a tortured past who can unleash powerful sonic blasts. And as we learned in Venom, symbiotes are weak against sonic weapons and fire, which, as demonstrated by Shriek's powers in this trailer, is seriously bad news for Eddie Brock. She's also Carnage's longtime love interest in the comics, but something tells me their double date with Eddie and Venom is going to take a turn for the deadly.
Sound at 4 to 6,000 hertz is lethal.
We see Eddie returning to San Quentin prison where he interviewed the serial killer Cletus Kasady in the post-credit scene of the first film, and now with a much less horrifying wig, Woody Harrelson's Cletus Kasady tells Eddie that he wants to give him his story, revealing to Eddie where his victims are buried, as we see during one scene of multiple corpses being exhumed. As confirmed by the first trailer, Eddie's working for the Daily Bugle's West Coast edition, which uses the same logo from the Raimiverse films. Now, this is likely just meant to be connective tissue to the properties and films that Sony owns, rather than outright confirmation that exists in one sprawling canon. Although, with that said, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is heading into the multiverse, so the SPUMC, the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters, could potentially follow suit with a Spider-Verse all their own. But with that said, don't hold your breath for Topher Grace's return anytime soon. In the shot of Eddie working on his laptop, though, we can also see him going through some of the crude drawings that Cletus scrawled in his cell in the first trailer. One of them is a tree presumably outside of Ravencroft with a line from Prometheus by Lord Byron. To thee the strife was given between the suffering and the will. This is a poem praising the rebellious spirit, willpower, and stoic suffering of Prometheus, a titan in Greek mythology, who is punished for stealing fire from the gods to give it to mankind. And his punishment was eternal torment, being bound to a rock whereupon an eagle would eat his liver every day for all time always. Now, based on the drawing of a church next to it where the film's climax seemingly takes place, it feels like Cletus views himself as a similarly messianic figure. He uses pain, torture, and murder to exert control over his lot in life, which is in keeping with the character's horrifying comic book backstory. And like Prometheus, maybe Cletus wants to steal the proverbial fire of the gods that is the symbiote inside of Eddie Brock, which is exactly what happens when he bites Eddie's hand to drink his blood. In Amazing Spider-Man 384, Cletus becomes Carnage after Venom leaves part of its symbiote behind during a prison riot. However, as we saw in 2019's Web of Venom, Carnage Born #1, the symbiote that would become Carnage entered Cletus's bloodstream via a cut on his hand. Here, though, they have Cletus taking a much more active role in acquiring this deadly power for himself. He's apparently such a connoisseur of drinking blood, he can taste the symbiote flowing through Eddie's veins, so I don't know, man, your move, Morbius. What do you bring to this equation that Cletus does not? He's like a blood sommelier. Now, whether this is an allusion to Cletus's cannibal past in the comics, or he's just like a truffle pig for symbiotes, that remains to be seen, but the end result here is the same. It turns Cletus Kasady into the sadistic scarlet symbiote Carnage, which is also nicely teased and mirrored by Eddie's black and red motorcycle helmet. And while Cletus tells us that all he wanted in life was carnage, we witness his horrifying transformation into Carnage himself inside that aforementioned church where he's dressed in a suit worthy of Smiling Tiger. Unlike how Venom wraps around Eddie like a suit though, Carnage seemingly erupts from within Cletus, taking over his entire body in this grotesque transformation. We then get a glimpse of the prison escape from San Quentin, perhaps a nod to the same jailbreak in Amazing Spider-Man 384. Carnage soaks up bullets like they're nothing at all before investigating the contents of a guard's stomach in the most horrifying way possible. In the wake of Carnage destroying a helicopter, we see Cletus riding shotgun with Shriek in a convertible, teasing their team up and her breakout from Ravencroft as well, which is likely what's happening in that brief shot of Carnage's tentacles slamming through a wall and sending guards and a doctor flying. In the church, Cletus tells presumably Eddie that he's not a crazy man, but he is a vengeful one before we cut to a photograph of Anne Weying, Eddie's ex-wife, and erstwhile symbiotic host of She-Venom.
Hi, Eddie.
Whoa.
Clearly feeling wronged by Eddie and perhaps his reporting, he's going to target Anne and her fiance to hurt Eddie. We see more shots of Carnage rampaging through what appears to be Ravencroft, which then transitions into the iconic shot from the first trailer of Carnage as the Vitruvian symbiote in front of the stained glass window in the church. Now, as we learned in Spider-Man 3, church bells can prove quite effective against symbiotes due to their sonic disruption properties. But with that said, we probably won't see them repeat that particular bit here because it's been done. Now, this is followed by maybe the funniest line in the trailer when Venom panics upon seeing Carnage.
That is a red one.
You need to come out right now.
Left alone in his Detroit Lions jacket and a subtle nod to Detroit legend turned Beverly Hills cop Axel Foley in the form of his Mumford Phys Ed department t-shirt, Eddie makes a compromise. If Venom fights Carnage, Eddie's gonna let Venom eat everybody, and I do mean everybody.
Promise.
I promise.
Oh yeah.
We see a shot of Carnage in front of a burning building, followed by Cletus and Francis walking away from it. Now, this is either them burning down Ravencroft Institute, or it could be St. Estes Orphanage, the facility where Cletus was moved to as a troubled child. It's also in line with the drawings carved into Cletus's cell wall in the first trailer about sweet death and how the Phoenix will rise. Anyway, we see some brief shots of Cletus doing his best Joker on the stairs dance outside of San Quentin, shrieking in the convertible, and Cletus causing a genuine ruckus in Mrs. Chen's convenience store where Eddie buys Venom's chocolate bars.
Function how, Mrs. Chen?
Real quick note about Shriek here though. She either has heterochromia or her blue eye is a sign of her using her dark empathy ability from the comics, which lets her draw out a target's darkest impulses. After that, we see Venom scaling a building that's erupted with red symbiotic strands looking like Carnage has infected it somehow, and while this is happening, we hear voiceover of Cletus telling Eddie that he feels like home to him, like family, which is fitting given that Carnage is technically Venom's offspring in the comics. The trailer ends with a much calmer restaurant scene between Eddie and Anne than the first film, where we learn that Anne is now engaged to Dr. Dan Lewis, played once again by Reed Scott. Now, you may remember Dr. Dan from the first film where he discovers the symbiote on Eddie's body. Here, though, he's unfortunately on the wrong end of Venom's instincts as a wingman.
God, I'm so sorry.
Not sorry.
And there you have it, folks. That is everything we spotted in the Venom Let There Be Carnage trailer, and we can't wait to see what director Andy Serkis and company have in store for us in this sequel. Now, we've got a couple of theories, mostly involving cannibal cults and dark gods, about what might be simmering beneath the film's surface, but in the meantime, for all manner of Marvel goodness, MCU or Spumsy, we've got you covered on Nerdist.com. But first, tell us, what did you think of this trailer? What do you want to see in this sequel? And did you spot anything that we missed?
Oh,
Let us know in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, stay tuned to Nerdist.com.